B'siyata d'shmai Purim h't'chk Vayomer Moishe al Yeshua. So Moshe said to Yeshua, Lonu Anashim, choose for us people. It say Hilachim b'Amalek and go and wage war against Amalek who had attacked the Eden when they came out of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, the pasuk includes Vayomer, and the Eibishter said, Ki yod al keis ka. As Rashi explains, Hashem's hand swears on his holy throne, Milchomik lahavaya b'Amalek midod dod. That Hashem
can't hear you.
You can't hear me. What?
I hear him.
You can't hear me. Who's unable to hear? Chaim, you can hear. Ephraim, you can hear. Aaron, try to get.
I can hear fine.
Yeah. Okay. So Aaron's trying to get on. You want to text them they should try again?
I texted him.
Texted him. Okay. Chazal. The Chazal say,
Rabbi, can you go back to explain what Kiyada Keska means?
Yeah, that Hashem swore by his throne that he will wage a perpetual war against Amalek. Another Chumash here. But that's how Rashi explains it. Yeah. That's basically the meaning. Okay. So Omra Chazal, so we see in the pasuk here as follows. Shein Hashem Sholem, not Hashem's name is complete because his hand is on case Ka, V'lo Shem Havai bin Miloyo, not Hashem's full name. And moreover, Veina Kisei Sholem. And Hashem's throne is not complete. Case Chaser Aleph, it's missing an Aleph, Kisei. Ad Shimach Zar Shel Amalek, until Amalek's seed is destroyed. So what's the connection between these two things? As long as Amalek's seed exists, neither Hashem's name nor his throne can be complete. What's the connection? We are to remember what Amalek did to you when you left Mitzrayim. And other pasuk says, that's in Parshas Kiseitze, the end, and in Shmuel, and Sefer Shmuel, Pakaditis Asher Asr Amalek Israel. I remembered what Amalek did to the Eden, Asher Somlei Baderech, which he placed him to him, confronted him on the way about Mitzrayim when he left Mitzrayim. What do we see from these two psukim? We see from these two psukim that the war against Amalek is bound up with Yetzias Mitzrayim. That the war against Amalek is connected with Dafki Yetzias Mitzrayim. Not Stam wage war against Amalek, but in both psukim, in Parshas Kiseitze and in Sefer Shmuel, Amalek is described in the context of attacking Yidden when they left Mitzrayim. In the movements are understood. What's the connection? Why is it so necessary to wage war against Amalek? Because he was the one that attacked them when they left Mitzrayim. Why is Yetzias Mitzrayim integral to the war on Amalek? Question's clear. Yeah, so two questions so far. What's the connection between destroying Amalek and Hashem's name and Kisei and throne being whole? And secondly, what's the connection between the war against Amalek and Yidden coming out of Mitzrayim, or as opposed to Stam, a war against Amalek? We You first have to explain Yetzias Mitzrayim, Vayifana, and its way. I'm not sure what he means by that, we'll see. So the pasuk says, Hashem says to the Yidden, I'll take you out from the poverty of Mitzrayim, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Because of them moving Mitzrayim. What do we see? What does Yetzias Mitzrayim mean? It means leaving. It means leaving the poverty of Mitzrayim, only Mitzrayim. Number one, even after having left Mitzrayim, till they get to Eretz Zavas Cholav Dvash, the land flowing with milk and honey, it's still some kind of only Mitzrayim, the poverty of Mitzrayim. And the kavanah is to get to Eretz Zavas Cholav Dvash. The other Maimon is going to explain what is the union of only Mitzrayim, of the poverty of Mitzrayim. And you see, he seems to be saying that the pasuk, go back to the pasuk, the El Eschem on Mitzrayim, El Eretz Zavas Cholav Dvash implies that till we get to Eretz Zavas Cholav Dvash, we're still in some way going out of Mitzrayim. That ends by Eretz Zavas Cholav Dvash. So what is the union of Aniyas? What are we talking about? What's true poverty? Biro Inyan, the Hinda Inyan Aniyas, or Kamaim Razal, in Oni Alabedas. So the Gemara says that there's no true poverty is bedas, in the mind. Vein Oshir Ela bedas, and true wealth is in the mind. What does this mean? The conscious faculties of a person, which make up the person in his conscious state, which are in general are divided into two divisions, intellect and emotions. So yes, one could be, they could be moichen and midas in a state of richness and wealth, broad and expansive. And there's the opposite condition, that the person is seichel and midas is in a state of poverty, small-minded, narrow, intellectually and emotionally. Like we see in actual fact, when a person is in a state of expansiveness and not in Yiddish, verquetscht, compressed, when he's not in that state, his brain operates differently. It's broad. He understands easier. It's easier time understanding. Moreover, greater depth. And to plumb the truth of something truer happens when the person is in the broad state. Likewise, emotions of the heart. So when they are in a state of expansiveness, that's ashirus. And that's a whole different state than being in emotionally contracted space. He elaborates. The implication here is that when the moichin is expansive, then the midas will be so likewise. That's me saying that. When he says v'cheinu b'midas shebelev, shekam heim b'efen shel yisach, but that's a consequence of the moichin, of the intellect being broad and open. Now he elaborates upon that, upon the effect of a broad mind on the emotions. certainly not only the emotions that are born directly of intellect. If the intellect is broad, as a nimshach gamba midas beifan kazev, his loves and his fears are also not narrow and constricting, but broad and embracing and deep. So that's for sure, that the moichin affects the nature of the midas. But moreover, hafilu b'negilah midas kifishtim shochem me'arotz, and as you learned in previous Vayomer to my Morim ago, the shirish of midas is not in seichel. Seichel unlocks and directs, but the midas are rooted in the rotzen. The will, I want. Midas, that's the true midas. So then, even if the source is in the will, but the way they get to the heart is through consciousness, is through the mind, is through the awareness. So they have to pass through, in terms of their expression, from the will to the heart, they have to be filtered and expressed through the mind. Or even a lesser involvement of the intellect that is not simply passing through the intellect. There's got to be intellectual awareness. The person is not aware, he can't have an emotion. He has to have an understanding. So one way is, he says, just derech maivir, which means not islapshus, not a whole lengthy investment in intellect, but just a justification of intellect. Derech maivir. The person wants, and therefore the emotions are born, and they have to be justified derech maivir by intellect. Or another ifin is shamoichenim b'bchinas maramokim. The intellect simply serves where to direct the emotions. A lesser role of intellect when there's pure will, and therefore I want this, therefore I love it, or I want to stay away from it, and therefore I fear it. And the intellect simply just directs the maramokim, gives the address literally of the rotzens, the state of the rotzens emotional state, the person's deeply emotional state. So in both cases, at the end of the day, the intellect has a role to play in emotion. So if the intellect is broad and the emotions are broad, as in Nasik, whether even the intellect is just pointing to it, or the intellect is derech maivir, it's justifying. But if it's all in a broad and expansive way, then the emotions are literally are also mirror the expansiveness of the moichin. So, moreover, I'm missing something here. Yeah. So that's what. Let's start again. Let's get the flow. I didn't know you said the kached isn't to the fact. So the intellect, the emotions are affected by the expansiveness of the intellect. When a person is in a broad state, it's not simcha. I assume he's going to say that later. That's in general what we mean here. So when a person is in such a state and opens up all the faculties, it pales not only in the moich and the intellect and the emotion, but even the rotzen. The rotzen itself is expanded. Of course, that's going to cause a very profound intensity to the emotion, because the rotzen itself is opened and firing in a very powerful way. So this is all ashiras, this is all wealth. I'm just going to make a comment in general. The yardstick of ashiras in Moishe is to tolerate something which is opposite, which you normally wouldn't like. But because this engaging in this situation or whatever is going to further the cause, So you tolerate it and you embrace it. That's broad-mindedness. Broad-mindedness is being able to be inclusive and include even situations which, in terms of chemistry, would rub the person the wrong way, or there's an immediate loss. But the bigger picture embraces this situation, this person in the country, and sees to utilize it for the cause, for the cause of the intellect. That's broad-mindedness. The opposite of broad-mindedness is the person is easily and quickly, what's the word? Ticked off, easily unbalanced. Doesn't go his way, doesn't click with him, then it upsets the whole apple cart. That's kat the samarichin. A child, if it gets upset quickly, easily derailed because the child's intellect is not developed. And broad-mindedness puts things in their place. So exactly as I'd like it, as I want it to be. But it has its place, and moreover, I can see how this is part of a bigger and more inclusive and truer picture. That's in general thinking of Israch v'Samoichin. But he seems to be talking here, Bambas, of Israch, that's not just in the Moichin. He says he's talking about the Ratzon also. It's a general state. As I said before, that's generally associated with Simcha. We see Taki, when a person is with Simcha, in a true state of Simcha, then he can embrace even his enemy. Normally, he couldn't be in the same room with him. He couldn't say hello to him. They could even embrace him. And if it's a big Simcha, dance with him. And his child Simcha, there's room for him, even for his enemy. So that's the root of Yisrachlus, or I should say the expression of it is Simcha. So let's go a little bit further. On the Mitzrayim, but Mitzrayim was the opposite. They were intellectually impoverished. The difficulty of the slavery. They possibly describes them as shortness of breath, literally. And hard work. So every part of their life was small and contracted and fakvetched. Now in detail, the Proteus says, in Mitzrayim. So this smallness is both the oid and the keli. What does it mean, the oid and keli? Spiritually, they were very small, very narrow. That's the light. And you were naked and bereft. We say this in Haggadah. All you had was Amunah. The people believed, but nothing more than that. Now, Amunah is a very great thing. Nonetheless, it's still a spiritual state of aniyus, as he goes on to explain. Even the Amunah is very, very critical. Not only in its own right, Amunah is what sustains and the foundation of all other faculties. And the faith, partially means faith in Hashem, faith and so on, is what is the foundation of everything connected to the three garments of Machshava, Dibur, and Maaseh. K'mayim Razal, it says, the Novi came, and took all 613 mitzvahs and placed it on one foundation, Shenemar, that Tzaddik b'Manosa Yichya, that Tzaddik lives by his faith, because that's the foundation of all Torah mitzvahs. And yet we're saying it's a small thing. That's all they had. You'll soon conclude. It's called that mitzvah. It's faith that gives all Tayag mitzvahs their kiyum, that they endure, chayzik, with kifos, strength and intensity. And but in terms of conscious expression, that's all a person's operating on. There's no understanding and no feeling. All he has going for him is he believes a believer. This is aniyas at a very, very low level. It's a terrible spiritual impoverishment because there's no intellect and there's no feeling. It's just emunah, just surrender. So that's aniyas mitzad the oir, the inyonim ruchni. He said there's aniyas in Mitzrayim also mitzad the kelim. What do you mean aniyas by the Yidden then mitzad the kelim? He goes on to explain that. They couldn't even hear Moshe Rabbi. They couldn't hear him because of the shortness of breath. They were so egged and so pushed. There is oil, but they couldn't take it. Oil is coming to them. It's inspiration that's coming to them. Words are coming to them, but they can't receive it. Not only they themselves didn't have oil. What do we say that? But what does oil mean? By them, the understanding and feeling, they weren't engaged that way at all. All was emunah. So only are they missing oil. When inspiration comes to them, and Moishe is talking to them, he's telling them, what's the redemption? Kindalach. We're going out of Golas, they can't even receive an oil that's granted to them. Never mind, they don't have their own oil. Oil, which is coming from above. You don't have to toil over that. It's been given to you. Moishe is standing and talking to them. The word of Hashem, the redemption, is at hand, and all the expressions and the endearment that Moishe uses. They couldn't hear it. So the kelim, that was the ability, the capacity to receive, is also very contracted, and even when something is given and it's right there in front of you and it's inspiring and uplifting, but because of the contracted, verquetschte state that they were in, they could not even receive the inspiration that came to Dvar Hashem through Moshe Rabbeinu. In addition to themselves not being in an internally inspired state, no oil within them. Are you clear? Yeah, more or less. A bit further. Yes, a little bit further. That's right. All right, we'll start the next ice tomorrow.